Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. Oh, bloody Ubisoft. Christ. So I would have loved to have brought you WTF is Assassin's Creed Unity, but what a saga it's been over the last couple of days that's brought me to the conclusion that right now it's goddamn impossible to do so. Why? Because on PC this thing is a mess. I've spent hours poring over options menus, getting the perfect configuration, making sure that everything works as best as I possibly can. I've spent yet more hours reading endless pages of performance complaints from people on PC forums the world over. And I have spent hours trying to force myself through a game that I had, frankly, little enthusiasm for, simply because it departed so much from the wonderful departure that was Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which finally realized that maybe, just maybe, the Assassin's Creed formula is a little tired, and perhaps going a bit off the rails with some piracy and some boat action would be a good idea. And as it turns out, it was a good idea. But let's be frank, the PC port of Black Flag was not particularly brilliant. It was functional, but it wasn't brilliant. And neither was Assassin's Creed 3. It's been shaky for PC when it comes to Ubisoft, but Assassin's Creed Unity, in my experience, as well as in the experience of thousands more PC gamers, is a mess. And I cannot keep trying to soldier through it with the crashes and the nonsense and the huge amounts of performance problems. I don't want to do it. And frankly, thankfully, I'm the one who runs this channel. I don't have to do it, but I will tell you about my experiences when it comes to performance, and hopefully this will be something of a warning to you. I hope this gets fixed. This game needs patching in a big, big way. So let me tell you what's going on with it. Now, when I first loaded up the game and went to the very small initial prologue area, the game's performance was all over the place. It was plummeting below 30 FPS at times, especially in cutscenes, which was very odd to say the least. And I wondered, well, what's going on? I just built a new PC with two GTX 980s and a 5930K. This thing beats the crap out of everything that I have. I've tested it on 10 different games so far. They've all run wonderfully, as you might expect. It's a very powerful machine. And yet, Assassin's Creed is all over the place. What's up with that? So I look at the presets and I mess around, and I find eventually that just turning it down to high from ultra high fixes a lot of the frame rate problems. But my god, does the game look a lot worse for it. And I'll show you some stuff in the background right here. There's me recording on high, and I'm looking at things like texture quality, and you're noticing it doesn't look particularly good, does it? No. Does it look better than Black Flag? Not really. In terms of the individual assets, this game has problems when you crank it down from anything that isn't ultra high. So you might be thinking, well, that's reasonable. I mean, you don't expect amazing graphics on anything but the highest settings, right? Yeah, I can get that, but the amount of power you need to play this game on Ultra with anti-aliasing off, by the way, we'll get onto that in a minute, is mind-blowing. Two 980s is not enough to keep this game at 60 frames per second on Ultra at 1080p. It is not. And don't even get me started on Ultra HD resolutions. Don't even try it. If you have Tri or Quad SLI, you might be able to do it. I asked a guy who had Tri SLI with 980s, hey, can you do Ultra HD and keep it at 60 FPS if you're running at, say, 2560 by 1440? No, we couldn't. And indeed, those with the minimum system requirements expect to have to put this thing down to 720p if you actually want playable frame rates. Ultra does not run well on SLI'd 980s. Some of the time, I can keep it at 60, but that is only with AA off, because here's what I discovered. Anti-aliasing in this game tanks the performance in a huge way, and it's not even using particularly demanding forms of anti-aliasing. We're not talking about SSAA times 16 here. No. We're talking about FXAA, of course the most basic, fast form of AA that most people actually prefer to turn off because they believe it actually makes the game look blurrier, and they're right, it subjectively at any rate does. And then they have SMAA that goes all the way up to 8 times, and SMAA is a pretty good form of AA. It's moderately efficient, it looks good, don't really have too many complaints with it. And then they have one form of TXAA and nothing else. So you would think that yes, there's going to be a performance impact, but it's not going to be insane. And really, we're used to having AA on if we're high-end PC gamers. It's really not that ridiculous. But even if you turn this thing on to TXAA or SMAA 2 times, the basic form of SMAA, the frame rate tanks below playable levels on both ultra high and on very high. Indeed, on high, it does have dips from time to time as well, and turning AA off is a huge performance boost, which should not be happening in a modern title on PC in 2014. AA, yes, it requires some power. It should not be tanking it that hard. I do not know what's wrong with it that's causing that to happen. So the situation is this. If you want to not have jaggies all over the place, then you better have a monster rig. Alternatively, you better turn down those settings. And if you do, oh my, you will see a huge difference in texture quality. It gets pretty damn bad. Not only on walls and objects around the world and terrain, I'm talking about clothing, and it's very noticeable in cutscenes, particularly when characters get close to objects. Clothing looks disgraceful, you're looking at low-resolution textures. It does not look good. I mean, this is a game that really should be played on Ultra if you can, but good luck playing it on Ultra. Now, these sound like the gripes of the first world, right? It's like, oh, he's got a big PC and it's not running well, and he's whining about it. Yeah, but think about it this way. This performance, for me, is pretty bad. How's the performance going to be if you're running on a worse rig than this? The answer is pretty bad. As I mentioned earlier, page after page after page of performance issues. And that's not where it ends. That's actually the least egregious problem that I happen to have with Assassin's Creed Unity when it comes to the technical side of things. One of the biggest problems I'm currently having is the damn crashing. It's happening frequently, for no apparent reason. I have no idea why. Couldn't tell you. Love to tell you, but it is crashing a lot. I've had it crash 5 times today while attempting to film footage. I have had random frame drops while attempting to film footage. Entering random buildings tanks the frame rate down to 15 for no apparent reason. I had an entire area of the game running sub 30. You teleport in, suddenly the frame rate is basically cut in half for no apparent reason, and you've got to slog your way through that at around 24 to 30 frames per second. And I'd love to say it was just PC that had this problem, but it's not. The console versions are dropping to 20 in many areas. This game is poorly optimized across all platforms. It is a technical mess. And that's not even the worst bit, because even if you did fix the performance issues, you are running into a myriad more problems with this game just being buggy and horrendous and evidently unpolished. You remember the pop-in Watch Dogs? Yeah, you probably do. When you were driving particularly fast, you'd see things appearing in the distance, not particularly inconspicuously. Here, even if you're running down the street, you are going to get not only NPC actors, but also parts of the terrain popping in very conspicuously. It looks terrible. It seems that in the pursuit of, quite frankly, pointlessly large crowds, the game sacrifices any semblance of pretending that it can actually handle it. Enemies and actors appearing out of nowhere in your way, that actually happens. Terrain that you didn't see that you run right into because it just appeared out of bloody nowhere. And, of course, all sorts of horrible visual artifacts like disappearing windows that are replaced by black voids for no reason if you look at them at a slight angle, lighting problems, shadow issues all over the place. Really problematic visual artifacting and bugs up the wazoo. And even that's, of course, not the worst bit, because you have NPC actors doing ridiculous things like teleporting over terrain, clipping through each other. The main character frequently clips through the NPC actors, and you might say, well, that sounds like a visual problem, that wouldn't actually affect the gameplay. Well, it does, because it actually affects the stealth system. It's possible to jump down on top of somebody, clip through them, and then not have them see you. It's that silly. And that's not the only problem the stealth system has. On multiple occasions, I've had people lose track of me when I've been standing right in front of them. It makes no sense. I can't imagine why, but the AI is absolutely awful this time around and doesn't seem to respect the stealth system in any real way. There's a myriad of nasty little issues, frankly, up to and including holes in actual character models. Maybe it would have been more sensible, instead of having these giant crowds that really mechanically do nothing for the game at all. I mean, it's not like there weren't crowd interaction mechanics in other Assassin's Creed games, they just didn't need 8,000 French people in order to make them happen. Maybe instead of having the big crowds that have all sorts of problems, maybe it would be a good idea to focus on smaller crowds where the NPCs actually act in a sensible way and where they don't have a myriad of visual bugs. I've seen things that your eyes would not believe when it comes to shifting detail levels at a distance. This is something that a lot of games do, but most games do it a hell of a lot better than Unity does, because Unity does it very obviously and conspicuously. I've approached an NPC and had his hairstyle change or his face change. from what I saw in the distance. Absolutely ludicrous. It's not just, oh, they're adding more detail as you get closer. No, they're changing the model entirely as you get closer. It looks ridiculous. It's a real shame, honestly, because the art team obviously put their heart and soul into this game to recreate this wonderful vision of revolutionary Paris. There are some excellent details around the city, and the whole thing looks great at a distance, but of course it's let down on the technical side of things. This game in motion is nowhere near what this game looks like in screenshots and beauty shots. That I can tell you for a fact, and that's really unfortunate. That's very disappointing. There are other issues as well. There's online connectivity issues. It has a system called the Initiates, which frankly barely works. It's got a microtransaction system in it, which on day one didn't work at all for reviewers. And some people speculated that it was even broken on purpose so that reviewers couldn't show you the prices of the microtransactions. And this is a single-player game, by the way, so don't even get me started on the idea of microtransactions in a full-price release. I said it for Dead Space 3, and I'll say it again for any other game that tries to pull this nonsense. I cannot trust you not to mess with the in-game resource system if the temptation of pushing microtransactions on the players is there. I can't trust you to do that. I have no idea what you did to the pacing of the progression and the gathering of the various in-game currencies because you decided to muddy the water with microtransactions. So I cannot trust you. It's the appearance of impropriety. They should not be there at all. Nonsense like reminding you that, oh, in order to unlock this chest, you need a companion app. Are you kidding me? I mean, I know that Assassin's Creed has reveled in the fact that everything you're doing is actually virtual. It's the exploration of genetic memory through an artificial simulation. And particularly in Assassin's Creed 4, they went all out with the idea that, hey, yeah, it's a game in a game, guys. They really push it on you this time, but they push it on you with things like a companion app that you need to run on a smartphone or a tablet, and treasure chests that you can find within the game that say, nope, can't unlock that unless you use this companion app, or can't unlock that unless you register for the Initiates program. Good lord. For a game that's supposedly focused on immersion, does that pull you right out? That's almost as bad as having the DLC vendor in your bloody camp in Dragon Age Origins. In fact, maybe it's worse because you don't get to get away from them. These chests are all over the bloody place. And if you want to spend that currency, then just hope, by the way, that the online system is even working. I tried to upgrade a weapon earlier by spending Helix points to, quote, hack the weapon, because again, the wonderful conceit is you're in a video game, guys, better not have a period of time where you're not reminded of that. But this is the stuff that you can buy or slowly earn throughout the game. So I hacked this weapon. It took a full minute to upgrade the damn thing. I was stuck in the waiting menu as the online server said, yep, okay, you have the right amount of this currency. Let's just communicate via bloody carrier pigeon in order to make sure that you're not getting something in this game that we don't want you to have. Bloody hell. I used to be able to input a cheat code. Now I've got to input a credit card. You know what's really sad? For all of this ranting and raving, the PC port, if it was properly optimized, wouldn't be too shabby. From an options perspective, it has a reasonable amount of stuff, and they've actually made an effort to make it work properly with keyboard and mouse. It helps that they added a new button to drop downwards, which makes the parkour on keyboard and mouse a lot better than it used to be. I'd still recommend using a pad for it, because frankly, that's what it was designed for, and they just haven't quite got the grasp on the keyboard and mouse controls yet, but it's not awful, and they have a decent amount of options here and there. They support advanced effects like HBAO+, they have PCSS quality shadows, they support multiple refresh rates, not that that'll make a blind bit of difference, because good luck running this at 144 Hz, good lord. And you can rebind the keys, although, as usual, it's all form over function when it comes to these menus. They are fancy, a waste of time. They've got like 5 keys on the screen at any given time when you're doing the rebinding. Like, look at our choice of font, look at how fancy the menu is. Someone spent weeks on this thing, so you're damn well gonna appreciate it. Yeah, well, I bloody well hate it. And yet, for all of this, I could endure the crashing, I could endure the poor optimization, and some of the nonsense within the PC port, if it wasn't just the same bloody Assassin's Creed game. And it's not as interesting as Black Flag, because Black Flag realized it might be a good idea to try and go in a different direction. Yeah, it still had the Assassin's Creed-ish combat, yeah, it still had the assassination missions and the dodgy stealth system and the collectibles all over the bloody place, but it had a bit of fun with them. It was collecting sea shanties that would deliberately fly away from you as you tried to grab them. It was a genuine challenge, and you wanted them because it would give you more variety when the real core of the game kicked in, when you had adventures on the high seas and really went to discover things and take over ships and battle with legendary vessels. that was pretty fun, and frankly, the parkour system on a ship works incredibly well when it comes to boarding actions. The combat worked well, you could draw braces of pistols and gun down 5 people at a time. It was pretty damn satisfying, frankly, but this time around, I'm sorry. No boats, no open world exploration of the high seas, nothing along those lines. You're right back in a city, you're right back with sluggish Assassin's Creed style combat. It just seems it's slower than previously, and it's not like they really added anything. They haven't added to the difficulty of the game. It's the same nonsense. Press space to dodge the very, very slowly aimed firearms. Press E to do a perfect parry to kick them back. You can do this pretty much till the end of time. And if somehow you actually get into trouble, don't worry, you've got a large supply of smoke bombs, stun bombs, and all sorts of other bloody things that you can use to obliterate large numbers of people at any given time. The gameplay is the same. And for all the extra bells and whistles, for all the quality mocap animations, which I've got to give huge credit for, things like the kissing animation. Within like the first hour, there's a cutscene where, of course, in real time, you end up kissing a girl, and it looks great. It actually looks like a real kiss. I think it might very well be the most realistic looking kiss I've ever seen in a video game. That almost went to Uncanny Valley territory for me. It looked great compared to what I've seen previously. The mocap guys did a stellar job. The animation guys did a stellar job. There are new animations that fit in really nicely with the parkour system. It makes everything look even more fluid than before, but it's still the same parkour system. It's still the same combat. It's still the same collectible heavy Ubisoft open world game. Go to a tower, unlock this, unlock that. There are a couple of different mission types which I quite like. The investigation missions are quite fun. You go around talking to people, looking at clues, reading things, and then deciding which person to accuse. And of course, if you accuse the wrong man, you end up getting less rewards. That's pretty cool. And the way that they've designed some of the assassination missions are all right. You get to kind of approach it in your own way. Although a lot of the information is frankly useless. Like, hey, yes, there's 69 guards. But who cares? Do you really need to know the number of the guards? It's not like you're really ever given information on the plans of the area. There's things like signature kills that seem to have been lifted straight from Hitman. And frankly, Hitman does a better Hitman than Assassin's Creed does. I can tell you that for a fact. And it's still the same thing. You still enter the area, kill the guy, and then you can easily escape without any problems at all, because God knows they'll only hunt for you for about 5 seconds before giving up after you murdered a very important individual. And even if you do get into a fight with them, as long as your E button works, you'll be just fine. This franchise needs a giant kick up the arse, and I thought that that's what Black Flag was gonna be, and unfortunately Unity, as much as it's a wonderful setting and potentially an amazing story, I can't suffer through the gameplay, the optimization issues, the crashing, and the bag full of bugs in order to experience it. I frankly have better things to do with my time. I have Inquisition sitting here begging me to play it. I've got all sorts of quality indie games that would really love some attention. I have spent enough time trying to play this damn thing. I'm sorry if I can't provide you with anything more in-depth, and please bear in mind that everything I just said is based on several hours of gameplay. It is not a complete review, because God knows I would never be able to stomach enough of this game to actually do that. Maybe, just maybe, after a good number of patches, this game will actually be worth playing, and I'll try and revisit it when it's more stable and it actually runs properly. But as it stands, I'm saying my experience with this game has been horrendous, and I do not wish it on anybody at the moment. Not at all. I'll see you next time.